So I want to be quickly introducing the panelists, Dr. Amina Salihu. If she's here, she is a senior program officer with the MacArthur Foundation Africa Office. She's also a farmer and a feminist. Madam, you're welcome. Mr. Tope Fasua is a businessman, economist, chartered forensic accountant, and also a writer. You're welcome, sir. One of my favorite people, and I'm not trying to be partial, DK Chukwumerije is a writer, author, performance poet, and public speaker. You're welcome to this event. Mr. Ahmadu Bello is a product of nomadic education and the first nomad in Nigeria to obtain a PhD. You're welcome to this panel. And Chris Ngodo is a writer, lawyer, and consultant on political risk, governance, public policy, and communication. Is Chris here? You're welcome. Majid Dahiru is a researcher, author, and columnist. He contributes to the Daily Sun and Premium Times newspaper. You're welcome to this panel as well. I was sure that my statement on favorite people was going to put me in trouble, but it was deliberate. It's wonderful to have all of you here, lady and gentlemen. I must question Mr. Onuma after this program why it is that we only have one woman on this panel. There have been questions already by Premium Times. I saw an interview, a Premium Times interview introducing this event, as to why it would seem that he couldn't get 30 women and 30 men to contribute to the book. And he didn't even try to correct it by putting more women on the panel. But we'll have that conversation much later. Interestingly, all of the panelists here are contributors to the book. Some of them I have spoken with before in times past, and others are pretty fresh voices. So I look forward to this conversation. I'm going to start by asking why they wrote some of the articles, or why they chose the title of their contribution to the book. Madam Amina Salihu, it is very clear that I'm going to come to you first. I'm going to be very partial with you. One Day It Go Better is the title of it. Hope, Redemption, and Nigeria. Why did you choose that title?
Hey, my sister Mope, and if you hadn't been the moderator of this panel, I would have refused participating, even though Chido is my brother and friend, for the obvious reason of inclusivity that you have raised. I chose that title because I wanted to center people, because everything we do, whether we remake or we make Nigeria, should be about how we incentivize citizenship. What does it mean to be a Nigerian? Outside this country, we're all born together. It doesn't matter what state you come from, you are a Nigerian. What is it about us, therefore, that divides us when we are in or where we are on our motherland? And I wanted to focus on redemption because I'm proud to be Nigerian. I have no other country. 1 out of 5 Nigerians, 1 out of 5 Africans is Nigerian. So if anything were to go wrong in this country, where would we go? This is the only part of the world where I'm a first-class citizen. But having said that, I also registered my exasperation as much as I love this country. And it's something that I heard Governor Fayemi refer to this afternoon about potential. Why are we always at the point of the potential, never the becoming? And the theme of waste was very dominant in my essay. We waste everything. We even waste crisis. Those of us who are 50 and below, who contributed to making of the book, are of a post-Civil War generation, but the pain of that Civil War continues to linger. We were talking about this book with Chido at the heart of COVID-19, and COVID-19 has changed our world in many ways. Centering the care economy has become very important, and the care economy is in the hands of women and girls and boys. Yet, you look at even the composition in this room, you look at the composition of governors, we have wasted the potential of 50% of our population women. Why is that so? We say we are a country that thrives on agriculture, yet only 40% of our arable land is cultivated. And we are not an agricultural country because we're not adding value. Just like we're not a petroleum producing country. We're only a petroleum bearing or petroleum exploring country. We are not producing because we have to get out the raw material, export it, and import it again as finished product. Now, I'm not putting anybody on the spot. This includes me, Maokbe. Look at the way we use time. Time is one resource that nobody has control of because you don't know when you were born, you don't know when you're going to die. But a lot of the time, we procrastinate. We started this event 1 hour, 13 minutes after time. So the ethics of the personal is so very important in the sense that we ourselves have to begin to locate ourselves in the change we want to see before we think about those new structures. Because if those new structures don't learn from the lessons of the past, nothing is going to change.
Thank you so much, Madam Salihu. Let me quickly ask you, Majid. You're a researcher, author, and columnist, and your title was A Country of Indigenous Tribesmen instead of a Nation of Citizens. Is this by design?
Well, I don't even know how to start from in answering this question, but maybe I should talk about the title of my contribution. Yes, Nigeria is a country of indigenous tribesmen and is not a nation of citizens. And because I believe that nation building is a condition preceding national development, without which you cannot have any form of development. Because no system of government, no law, no constitutional framework, no policy works for a country of tribesmen. Systems work for nations of citizens. And I feel that after 61 years of independence, and we are still a country struggling to realize our potentials, I think the conversation now should start from how to transform Nigeria from a country of tribesmen to a nation of citizens.
And I think it's a good place to, first of all, pause your thoughts, because if you really want the idea behind that, you have to read the book. So it's just a teaser. I'm going to go quickly now to Mr. Fasua. So please, can you tell us about the title of your work? Perhaps every great nation was a mere geographical expression.
I got it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Maokbe. Good afternoon, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. So actually, the title of my article there was derived from the very oft-quoted Obafemi Awolowo comment that Nigeria was a mere geographical expression. However, in time, I discovered, no less through one of the writings of the Vice President, sitting Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, that was actually not original to Obafemi Awolowo. In 1847, a certain gentleman in the Austrian Empire called Count Klaus von Metternich actually made that statement about Italy. And he said, Italy is a mere geographical expression. At that time, Austria was kind of sitting on top of the world, and Italy was one of those states that they had colonized and stuff, you know. And of course, he was making that comment about the disparity and the diversity of the Italian, like Africans, they have the kinky hair, and they have the Mediterranean culture within the same Italy. But I'm asking the question, if Italy was a geographical expression, Italy refused to break up till today. If they gave most of us free Italian residency, we would all go and live there today. So why are we not piggybacking on that to make something of our country? But of course, since that time, I've been a bit disillusioned also because of our lack of collective progress. And I'm saying today, my key comment would be that I'm almost giving up on democracy because it seems like our democracy is feeding on weaknesses, for example. We have 15 million children out of school. We have a high rate of illiteracy. However, the military also has failed us. So where do we go from henceforth?
Okay,
I'm actually pushing for an elite consensus and also an intellectual revolution of sort.
For more on the article, consult the book. Let me quickly come to you, DK Chukwumerije. The title of your work was Looking Back to Look Forward. Reminds me of the Bob Marley song. If you don't know where we're coming from, you know where we're going to. Something to that effect. I think is that song, or even the Chinua Achebe saying that we must know where the rain began to beat us, right? So that we know where to begin to dry ourselves.
Exactly. I don't think I even need to say anything again. You said it all. Just learning from history so we can find the way forward. And I focused essentially on the fact that we're a diverse multicultural society and that our tendency to prioritize our ethno-religious differences over socioeconomic progress is a major problem for us in our country.
So I'm going to rephrase it this way and say, don't you think that somehow, because we have been looking back, some people will say we've looked back too much, and that's the reason why it would seem that we're so fixated on the past, we're unable to move forward. Would you agree with those people?
I think that we also have our understanding of our history is not comprehensive enough. So I don't agree with them. We don't have a comprehensive understanding of our own history. Just take the comment that Tope just made. Always attributed to Chief Obafemi Awolowo, Nigeria is a mere geographical expression. But he made that comment in a book he wrote called The Path to Nigerian Freedom. He didn't make that comment as an argument against the viability of Nigeria. He was trying to point out the path that Nigeria should take to be a viable entity, which is Nigeria has to be a federal system because it's a diverse society. So we have today a very shallow understanding of our history that has been perverted by our own internal tribalism. We're not able to look at our history objectively. If we were, we would understand that Nigeria is not the creation of the British. That for 10 years, between 1950 and 1959, Nigerians from all walks of life, all regions, all religions, sat down together in constitutional conference after constitutional conference and agreed to live together. Because there was a very clear vision of the potential of a nation like Nigeria.
Again,
and we need to tap back into that vision.
A teaser. You want more? Read the book. And I'm going to come to you now, Ahmadu Shehu. You say you're a product of nomadic education and the first nomad in Nigeria to obtain a PhD. And I don't think it's any surprise then that you've written this towards a community-based model for basic education. How big is education a factor in our moving forward?
Yeah, yes. My contribution was basically a lesson from my own life and the life of everyone here, including my father, the former vice president, everyone here. We are here because we had one tool that developed our human capacity, which is education. So when all questions are being asked, all problems are being, notified, all solutions are being dissected, I find that the beginning point where these problems can be dealt with is via education. But education, not literacy. So communities as a country should be the center of our experiences as human beings, what we consider to be prestigious, what we consider to be knowledge, how we run that knowledge, how we sensitize ourselves as citizens should be directed towards the communities that we are. And I feel most of the ills of this country and any other human society would be based on the failure of the society to realize itself, which is what education is all about. So my contribution is basically saying that all of the failures that we have is because we failed in education. And how do we deal with that? I proposed a community-based model. Where,
For those who are interested in that community-based model, consult the book. And let me just say here that I'm sure that some forms are being given out. They're going to be given out much later. You feel free to buy as many copies of the book as you would want to. Because don't forget, 60 people contributed to this book, some of whom you're just listening to. I think this will be roughly 10% of the contributors to the book. So you can imagine just what body of knowledge is inside that book. Thank you so much for your contribution. And let me come to you, Mr. Chris Ngodo, lawyer and consultant, and you wrote on the third travel, Democracy and the Perpetual Struggle for Human Dignity. The reviewer did have some very interesting take on democracy, and Mr. Fasua also said that he is losing faith in democracy. I don't know if you want to relate that with your thoughts on your work.
Right, thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. The premise for my work, for the essay, is first the understanding that nation building is an intergenerational endeavor. And the struggle for perfection or perfectibility continues from generation to generation. It never ends. I realized that I was writing in the context of great despondency, a great sense of existential hopelessness about Nigeria in terms of people giving up, whether it is that they're giving up on the country, losing faith in the country, or losing faith in democracy. I was writing within that context. And I quoted Frantz Fanon, who said every generation must discover its mission and either betray it or fulfill it. And one way of looking at Nigerian history, which is the anchor of my essay, is that there have been three great struggles in Nigerian history. The first was the struggle against colonialism, which was the context within which Obafemi Awolowo makes that much misrepresented statement. The second was the struggle against military dictatorship, which gave us this democracy. And the third is now that which we must embrace, the challenge being that we have not fully embraced that struggle. And the short and simple way of saying it is that we must deepen democracy. Democracy must go beyond voting rights. Democracy does not stop at voting. And some would argue that it may not even be the most important element of democracy. There are things like rule of law and constitutionalism, which I would argue is even more important than having a new constitution. It makes no difference what constitution you have if people will not respect any constitution. If there's no culture of abiding by rules of any kind, then it makes no difference what constitution you have. So constitutionalism, separation of powers, protection of minorities, inclusion, representation, all of these elements are the things that we are struggling for. And that is the struggle we must embrace, in short.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wood. You know, a lot of it was also captured in the speech, the keynote address given by Dr. Fayemi, when he was also talking about the people who are willing to face that future. I think first and foremost, people must realize what the third struggle is. When you first of all said what the third struggle is, I tried to understand what it was. I understood the first one, colonialism. I understood military dictatorship. But then having to embrace democracy itself, the fact that democracy is not an end in itself, and that we must now make it work for us, is now what you're describing as the third travel. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not going to take too much of your time. Let's quickly see if we can dissect or distill into, and I know that this is going to be very hard work. It's the reason I didn't envy the reviewer. Distilling all of the thoughts, the many trajectories, the many routes which you have taken to approach this matter. It's very much like the different parts of an elephant and, you know, describing it. But at the end of the day, what we want is a picture of the whole. when we talk about, we certainly are not happy or satisfied with where we currently are. So when we talk about this country and the part that affects each and every one of us, how do you see us restructuring, and I don't know whether this is a term to use, but getting the things that we want without, in Dr. Fayemi's words, upsetting the apple cart? Do you think this is possible? Let me start with you, Dahiru.
Restructuring means different things to different people. But I actually think that, yes, no structure in the world is perfect. I mean, Nigeria is not an exception too. But what I think is more important is what I call organic restructuring of the Nigerian mindset. I do not believe that Nigerians are too diverse to be one nation. I do not think so. I do not also think that Nigeria is a creation of the British Empire. Before Lord Lugard set foot into Nigeria, the various peoples of Nigeria have commonalities in terms of history, language, culture, tradition, that even extend beyond the borders of modern-day Nigeria into Benin Republic, into Chad, into Niger, and into Cameroon. And so we had so much more in common that differentiates us, even before colonialism. But we have distorted our history so much so that we begin to see the Yoruba man are so distinct or so different from the Igbo man, and the Igbo man are so different from the Kanuri man, to the extent that we negotiated from the British a federating unit that was structured along our ethno-geographic fault lines. And that is the bane of our development. And to overcome this is not about physical restructuring anymore, because if you want to create more states for emerging identities, you're going to face a decentralized problem that you have now. So I think we need a deliberate political process that is guided by that self-enlightened realization that Nigerians are essentially one people, and that it is possible to be Igbo and be Kano, and it is possible to be Yoruba and be Akwa Ibom, and it is possible to be Ibibio and to be Adamawa, so that the potentials of Nigerians within their nation can be harnessed for global competitiveness. It's a deliberate political process that is required. It's not so much about the law, it's not so much about democracy or military rule. Without evolving into a nation where you have citizenship elevated above ethnic identities, there is no system that can work for you. And we'll keep having this conversation probably 60 years after today on how to move Nigeria forward. So I think we must begin to have that consciousness now amongst all of us. And there are abundance of evidence to prove that indeed we are one people. We are a monoracial country. Diversity is not actually measured in terms of ethnicity. Diversity is a measure of racial composition of a particular geographic space. So for a people that are monoracial, we are black African people. Looking into this hall, I'm seeing people that look so alike that you can almost mistake Adija Tuku Abubakar to be the brother, another brother to His Excellency Dr. Fayemi. So such a people do not have a reason to cling so rigidly to our artificial tribal delineations, to such an extent that we begin to want to create local government and states along tribal lines and sub-tribal lines. So if this consciousness is there, we will realize that we need to elevate residency, for example, over and above state of origin. I will tell you something today. There is a misalignment between our economy, our individual economies, and our democratic choices.
I've thought about this, to be very honest. I understand perfectly what you're saying, and I think that when you look at the contributors to the book, for instance, I mean, somebody did point out here, one thing unites everybody is the fact that we're all educated. And it would seem that when you're educated, you belong to a certain tribe. You certainly fit into a particular tribe. So I, as they say, come from Lagos State, but I grew up in Delta State. So I tend to identify a lot as well with Delta State. However, when you ask me, what is my name? And I say, Maokwe, and you say, oh, where are you from? Then the problem seems to arise. Where do I say I'm from, even though this is where I've spent all of my life?
If Nigeria was a nation of citizens, you are from Delta. So it is possible to be Yoruba and be Delta. I say this because our democracy has not worked for us, because the process that throws up leadership in a democracy in Nigeria is fundamentally driven by identity politics. And the only reward system for identity politics is patronage, which is, in another term, corruption. It is pure corruption. It is stealing. It's abuse of office. Because such tendencies as nepotism, sectionalism, that actually corrupt practices are legitimate cultural tendencies for elected leaders to extract from the center to the various sections, with themselves as the biggest beneficiaries first.
Let me ask, Madam Amina, do you agree completely with that? Because some people, I'll give you another instance. I did not always bear Maokbe, and this is something that I'm just revealing now, but I didn't always answer Maokbe. My first name is Esther. I wanted to identify, I'm going to be on national TV. Let me have a name that people can say is Nigerian, for instance. Is it always about corruption, or is it about wanting sometimes to preserve what we think we're about to lose, something ancestral, more or less?
Absolutely. It's such a very complex question you've asked, because a human being has multi-identities. And sometimes those identities shift by virtue of your location or the particular need that you have at a point in time. And women understand this very well. You didn't even mention the fact that before you got married, you had a name. And then as you got married, you were expected to change your name. But who says you need to do that? So it's a shift in alignment. And people have to think about instances where they think their particular needs will be met or they will be protected. Now, the ideal citizenship that I would like to see for Nigeria is one based on residency. If I have lived in a part of this country, I pay my tax, I have invested in it, my children have been raised there, why would I not claim that state? Why should it matter where my father or my mother was born? Why should it matter where I was born? So I should be able to have that kind of flexibility. And you see, that kind of thing can happen when we begin to do something differently. And Vice President, His Excellency Atiku Abubakar, referenced something earlier in a very metaphoric sense. He said we can walk and talk. I agree. But when we're walking, we have to know the direction towards which we're walking. What is the compass? Is that compass a direction where we all can see the line of sight and we know what's in it for us at the end of the day? Because incentive is very important. And when we talk, are we being heard? Are we being listened to? So you take, for example, in the entire negotiation, because negotiation is a very common, logical thing when we are all together and we're different. And you have a federal character principle in this country. That federal character does not have a gender character. So you look at the analysis of the ministers for this country, for example, or you even look at the National Assembly, and it is very skewed because there isn't a deliberate consciousness to ask ourselves the question, where is the other percentage of citizens that make up this country? So it becomes very problematic in terms of when we talk about restructuring. Restructuring what? For whom? To where? What's going to change? Because unless we look at three things, gender, geography, and generation, and across those three, disability, nothing is going to change. We're just going to pour old wine into new skin, and it's not going to change. Will restructuring address climate change? Is it going to affect the fact that Lake Chad is about 30% of its former self right now? Is it going to address the fact that farmland is now so very scarce because we have built on those lands that we should have used for farming? Is it going to address the fact that the herders do no longer have any grazing field because we have so grown exponentially that we have to use the land that was set aside for those kinds of needs? So it's a political economic question we need to focus on. And I think because we have certain duty bearers in the room today, decentralizing infrastructure is going to be the way in which we force a restructuring that will be very meaningful. Because if every state said, look, I want to deal with my own electricity my own way, I want to strengthen agriculture, I want to have a community-based educational system like my colleague has said. If I want to study BA Yoruba, why do I need to learn English? Why would we not, respect what we already have and build on it, whether it's from the north or the south? I'm sure you all know that Harvard is now studying the Igbo boy system of apprenticeship. Did anybody ever study that? Did anybody ever realize that that was a transgenerational way of building the economy and building new leaders? Now, we're going to allow Harvard come and learn it and take it away. Then someday we'll be saying, but it started in Nigeria, they stole it. They didn't steal it, oh, my people. If we allow ourselves to be caught unawares, they will keep misappropriating the resources that belong to us. Like Indonesia came in the 60s and got palm kernel, and today we are importing palm oil. So really, I think we need to be honest with each other. We need to find the courage, Maokwe, to sit and talk with each other. Sometimes when you sit and talk in a honest way and you're listening, those things you're afraid of, can always be resolved. It's not rocket science. It takes mutual respect. It takes an accepting of the fact that we are different in very different ways. And we need to also find the concepts and the words that would build trust, because trust is in short supply. And there's a concept that I have seen to be very problematic for us as a people, is the use of that word tolerance. What exactly does that mean? Why do we need to tolerate each other? It should be about mutual respect and acceptability and solidarity, because we all matter and we all matter equally.
Thank you very much. Well, a word which you've used here, you've talked about incentive, and if there's anybody who will understand the incentive, it will be Mr. Fasua, because he's a businessman. And I don't know whether you think, because when we're talking about restructuring, oftentimes, it's always centered around money. We don't want to talk about it. But oftentimes, it's about money. We just don't want to say resource control. Only recently, from our head of state, General Ibrahim Babangida, was saying that he now supports resource control and that he thinks that people will have his neck for now, supporting resource control. I don't know what your thoughts are, if you have thought about how we, deal with money in this country. I think one of our contributors also did say, that's the Ford Foundation contributor did say, that a renewed Nigeria should be one that is open to debate. Why do you think we've shied away from the topic or talking about incentives?
Incentives.
For us to decentralize. Yeah.
Thank you very much. 30 years ago, I graduated from, then Ondo State University, now Ekiti State University. His Excellency is here. And His Excellency conferred on me this morning the title of Motor Park Economist. I think I took that over from, is it Pini Jason or Stanley McKebu? One of them was called Motor Park Economist a long time ago. Economists actually think in terms of incentives. We actually believe that everything can be explained away by understanding the incentive behind it, which you could also call motivation behind things. However, we're trying to be more nuanced going forward. So basically, I think regarding restructuring, my thinking, which I've tried to perpetuate so many times in my few writings, is that it should be all about how well is the Constitution delivering for the people of this country. How well. And therefore, restructuring should be built into the Constitution to say that this Constitution, like any company mission, vision statement, value statement, will be reviewed from time to time in some sort of retreat to know whether it's actually delivering for the people. So it's not something that all of us failed in that regards. The CSOs and co, the people, we went to sleep for maybe 20 years and then woke up and said, we're not restructuring this country. There's no way you restructure this country in one fell swoop and have a perfect system. No constitution is perfect. The Constitution of the United States from which we took, that starts with we the people, should have actually been said to be we the aristocrats. The few people who started the idea or the concept of United States, even the so-called Federalists, John Jay, James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, they could not even agree on the meaning of federalism till tomorrow. People like Jefferson believed that, look, let the state be more independent. These other guys called the Federalists, they wrote 85 papers saying that, no, it's all about coming together so that we can ward off the Spanish, the English, the French, who would otherwise have come through the back door to capture us again. All right, so now, about 3 weeks ago, I was in Egypt. And I spent about 2 weeks in Egypt, in Cairo. And I found that, look, within Africa, Nigeria is underperforming. In fact, we haven't started. And that's why I was saying that, look, democracy, I ran for president in 2019. With all due respect, Your Excellencies. It was a feeble attempt, but it was an attempt all the same. We said, let's try our best. Let's see what it's all about. I learned about Nigeria. Anybody that's sitting in Lagos, sitting in Abuja, sitting on Twitter, thinking that you can win an election in this country, you're kidding yourself. You know, so we tried and did what we had to do because it was better than sitting idle and just criticizing on the internet. Okay, I realized that Egypt, Cairo, is far gone. The economies of North Africa is integrating with the economies of Europe. South Africa is driving the economy in the south. East Africa still has a large proportion, population of English people, Europeans, and co. I realized that West Africa is the black leg of Africa, and Nigeria is leading that black leg. And therefore, we cannot continue like this. Okay? And also, I'm saying that if the democracy, which was actually held in suspicion by the classicists, people like Socrates, like Plato, they said that democracy will only work in an environment where the people have food to eat, because the decision of choosing who your leader should be is an informed decision. It's not the decision you make on an empty stomach. If anybody shows up with 3,000, 4,000 naira, you vote for him, of course, if you don't have anything to eat. In Ondo State, where I'm from, they call it the Boko Sebe. You know, vote and cook a pot of stew. You know what I'm saying? Now, so there is a suspicion. Now, this democracy is feeding that same system whereby, you know, if you are talking about ideas, forget it. If you are talking about moving Nigeria forward, forget it. But if you show up with the money, you get the votes. What do? We can't get rid of democracy. We cannot invite the military. They also failed in their time. What happened? And which goes back to what you're saying. The debate is what we're talking about. What Dr. Fahmy talked about, the epistemology. You know, in doctoral speak, that means the origin of knowledge and the body of knowledge. How does it come about? This democracy we're practicing, we should have a no-holds-barred attitude to debate, a no-holds-barred attitude to examining the democracy and bringing all the ideas to the table that will take this nation forward. I'm only interested in the economics of it. I'm only interested in the humanity of things, to say the people of this country are suffering too much and this is unacceptable. So if the private sector has to come together, all the Dangotes of this world, and leverage their money and bring infrastructure to this place. In Egypt, they built a bridge in 1 month with their own knowledge. University of Ibadan was their first university. It's been around for 72 years. We can hardly manufacture a bulb in this country, a needle, with our own knowledge, with our own equipment, with our own technology. And that's what should be the focus. What I see for Nigeria now is work, work, work. I'm sorry, I'm not very big on this idea of so much talk, on the idea of, you know, looking for rights without responsibility and all of that. Work, work, work. My son is here. All right, he's just 18. He's going to be 18 in September, you know, studying in some university in Nigeria. You know, we are leaving a bad legacy for them, and they're not going to be able to sort this thing out by the time we're gone. Work, work, work for this country. I believe there's potential for this country. I believe that the negative energy that Dr. Fahmy spoke about is not what we need, but that's why you see so much in this country. But this country can be great, but we need to bring that intellectual firepower to understand that we don't have to read things from textbooks before we think we can do it. We can be original and we can create our own systems. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your contributions. I sincerely hope that the country which we leave behind for your son and, of course, our children will be much better. And that's the reason why we're here. But let me quickly ask you, DK, you have spoken a lot about unity, about why it's important for us to be together, that there is really not much of a difference, very much along the lines of what Majid has said in terms of us being monoracial, that there is more that unites us than divides us. But sometimes, and I think I've asked you this question before, do you ever lose hope?
No.
Why?
I don't know why. That's the truth. I don't know why. But I just see the possibilities. I focus on the possibilities. So no, I don't lose hope. I think Nigeria will be great. I believe that we will. The pool of talent here is very strong. And I think we're a very unique country. There is a resilience we have that we underestimate. Not many countries have gone through as much as we have gone through, and they still come out. You know, we fought a civil war for 3 years, and it's not common for a country to just have a civil war and not relapse into it again. A country like ours, it's not common. But in Nigeria, we got up from the war and we kept going. You know, there is an energy here that we underestimate, and I feel it. A woman can be, you can see her by the side of the road frying akara, and she's sending her children to university. I went to University of Abuja. One of my colleagues used to drive, he was a Fulani herder. In the evening, you see him driving his cattle, going to school. You know, so there is a desire to make ourselves better. And it's not there are two Nigerias. There's public sector, there's government Nigeria, and there's private Nigeria, you know. And sometimes it's like seeing, with all due respect, like maybe seeing a very old man married to a fine babe, and you're wondering, how did these two people meet? So sometimes when you look at the state and you look at society, you wonder, what's going on here? You know, our state does not resemble us. And with time, we will correct it. We will correct it with time, you know. So what I normally try and do is to appeal to people to be patient with the process. You know, we look at America, we look at these countries that are centuries old. They are centuries old. We are a young country. Literally, in every way, we are young. But we are slowly, and sometimes we underestimate the progress that we've made. Nigeria of today is not the Nigeria of the 1960s. You know, and we've made very critical progress in many areas. For instance, now it's no longer possible for somebody to just become president of Nigeria by winning elections in his region. It was a huge step forward for us as a nation because that was a very critical reason why the First Republic was so unstable. We look back at it now with rose-colored glasses. But in the 1951 elections, the MPC did not even contest outside of the North because it didn't need to. But today, we have provisions in our constitution that say that you cannot become president just by winning the popular vote. You have to win a certain amount of votes spread across the country. A very important safety guarantee for a country like ours. This is happening. We have the government of Gowon, for instance, the investments it made in unity schools. I am a product of a unity school. That investment was to create people like me who can one day stand up to talk for the nation, not just for our ethnic group or our religion. I am Igbo, and I'm proud of it. I'm proud of my culture. Culturally, I'm Igbo. But I'm not mistaken about my nationality. I am Nigerian by nationality. I was born in Lagos. People say that there are no Nigerians. Nigerians don't exist. I am a Nigerian. I exist. It is my culture. And God does not create things in single. If I am here, then there are other people like me somewhere else. Because God does not create one. There must be at least two of you somewhere. So Nigerians are coming. The Nigerians are coming. My children will be even more Nigerian than I am. All we need to do is to preserve this. This country is a formidable platform. It's a formidable brand. There is no country that comes out of Nigeria that will have a brand that is as formidable as the Nigerian brand. None. It's a formidable vehicle. Let us just preserve it for the people that will use it well. That's all I'm asking. It doesn't take much, and we can do it, and we will do it. So why do I have hope? I don't know. Maybe I'm just like that.
Well, we'll need you to keep being like that so that the days when we don't feel so hopeful, we have to remember that there are those who are just made of hope. And will continue to remind us that indeed we're a formidable brand. I want to come to you now, Mr. Shehu. I know that there's a lot of back and forth about what is currently going on, farmer headers clashes. And I know that oftentimes when you see it and you understand the plight of those, when you see here in Abuja, for instance, you don't even have to go too far. Just look in Abuja, young people, young children herding cattle. And sometimes people visiting their angst, their annoyance of what is currently happening in other parts of this country on these young ones, wondering, I'm sure you're wondering, if only they knew. Sitting where you are right now and picturing the current challenges that we face security-wise and how it's been described, and your own drive and thrust for education, understanding how complex and how simple it is. What are your thoughts in terms of what we need to do to bridge that divide from where we are now moving forward?
Yeah, this is my life. It is not that it's something I've lived. Those kids you see going around Abuja streets with cattle, I was one of them at some point. And I do think that three things are going on, and these have to be resolved. There's this idea of a Nigerian narrative that is totally missing in how we analyze our problems. If there is prosperity in any part of Nigeria, that prosperity belongs to Nigeria. And if there's a problem in one part or segment of this country, that should be treated as a Nigerian problem. Why it is difficult to solve this issue, one of them, there are many reasons which I will talk about. One of them is how we describe the problem and the narrative we've built around it. While you and I and every other journalist know that the farmer-herder clashes has been anticipated about 100 years ago, that is why the British actually created grazing reserves for this country. And while we know that it is not a problem that is peculiar to Nigeria, this problem happens all over the world where there is some sort of diminishing resources when it comes to land for farmers and grazing for herders. And we know that it is not an idea of what language does the herder speaks and what language the farmer speaks. In essence, if it was a Fulani herder and a Fulani farmer, they were still going to go to war. And if it was a Yoruba farmer and a Yoruba herder, they were still going to go to war because it's about grasses, water, and farmland. But an enlightened journalist of global standing would come to me and say, Fulani headsmen kill farmers. To an extent that I, a Fulani, or my brother who is a Fulani, or my sister, is now being criminalized for being in the same ethnic group as someone whose resources have been taken away by you, the speaker. And that those stereotypes would now make things even worse and more difficult to resolve. The second thing that has gotten us here is what I always say, refusal to acknowledge the truth when it matters. In the 1980s and even early 90s, when some Nigerians had a foresight to say, look, we cannot continue this way. These people we neglect, the people in the bush and those on the road with cattle, need to be integrated and they need to go to school. A commission was created, which I benefited from, but how far have we used that institution to make sure that majority of people like me and my cousins who are still in the bush got this opportunity that you, Mope, and my friend, DK have? So they continued being marginalized and being pushed to the peripheries, and until they've got no hope, the type which Chike has or I have. Now, the majority of Nigerians are within those cycles. of lack of food, lack of hope, lack of education, lack of nothing. They are basically not citizens as you and I are. So to deal with this, for me, it's absolutely very easy because it's my life. That's how I say it. If you were to give us, Nigerians, good basic education, forget the university, forget the college of education, forget the polytechnic. Give Nigerians solid, good basic education that equips them to live within their immediate environment. And give them the understanding of themselves that we have a country, we are citizens, and we have a responsibility. You are going to have a viable country in a very short period of time.
And I agree completely. I mean, can anyone fault the power of education? I don't think anyone can. But let me quickly come to you now, Chris Ngodo. And democracy is, it's a big issue. There is no way that we'll talk about Nigeria where we currently are, democracy. You heard Mr. Fasua say, oh, look, I'm beginning to lose faith in democracy. I do not know whether it is democracy as a concept in general or whether it is democracy as practiced in Nigeria. But let me ask you this, and it's a very simple one. Are you hopeful for democracy in Nigeria?
Yes, I'm hopeful, not just about democracy, but about the country. I think that I think that when we look at these things, there's a tendency to dwell very much in the moment and then use the moment, the issues of the moment as a lens for looking at the entirety of our history. And I would like to explore a bit, borrow a bit from what Dike has said about the underestimation of our own progress. Nation building and even democratization, these are generational endeavors. When the US Constitution was written, it was written by 55 people. All of them were white. There were no black people in the room. There were no Native Americans. There were no women, right? That same document, in that document where they talk about we hold these truths to be self-evident, at that point, not only was there no agreement on what federalism was, there was no agreement on what people were, because black people were not considered people in the same sense that white people were considered people. So my point is that nation building is an evolutionary thing. And when we look at our current system, if we are to go back a bit, this current system is the product of an elite consensus that came about after the Civil War. It is not that we haven't learned from our experiences. We have. But circumstances change, and sometimes the tools you develop in a historical moment become inadequate in the next historical moment. So after the Civil War, there was a new elite consensus that emerged, and it zeroed in on things, one of which we've already pointed out, the idea of a majoritarian presidency, that to become president of this country, you need to have votes from across the country. It is impossible to create an ethnic hegemony, to have a presidency based on ethnic hegemony or assumed on the basis of an ethnic hegemony. We created integrative institutions. All of this was meant, and I think the fundamental idea, this is what we call sharing the national cake. So the idea of equity that we had was to ensure that this country's resources, the national cake, was shared as equally as possible to every region of this country. But I point out that times have changed. The national cake is a metaphor for hydrocarbon resources. We are in a world in which hydrocarbon resources are no longer a strategic advantage. Revenues have diminished, and our population has kept surging, has grown fourfold since that time, since the end of the Civil War. So the challenge is to create opportunity, more opportunity for what is one of the world's fastest growing youth populations. And we have to abandon the anchoring to identity politics,
Because the problem is not diversity, it is not plurality. The real problem is that we have made identity the key of access to social and economic opportunity. That is why even when Nigerians grow up in plural environments, they are forced by survival, by the necessity of survival, to put on ethnic garments that they do not believe in. So these things are dictated and compelled by the political environment, by the political economy, as someone has said. So these things can be reversed. These are not impossible problems. There is no problem that Nigeria has currently that other countries do not have. In that sense, there is nothing exceptional about this country. So I have great hope in democracy because democracy is, in fact, the only way to govern a country like this. We have tried authoritarianism. We have tried deluding ourselves with hopes of an enlightened autocracy or an enlightened totalitarian system. This is what we spent 30 years of military rule trying to do. Those things failed comprehensively. We have empirical evidence that they don't work. So we have no option but to improve democracy. And that, as I said, means going beyond merely voting to making sure that we are creating opportunity for people. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your contributions, Chris. I have to thank my panelists. You guys have done a fantastic job, and I hope that members of the audience who would like to contribute much later will be willing to do so.